This is about the kids, isn't it? It's legal, all of it, I swear.
Rifles are the most popular category of weapon in Ready or Not, and for good reason. They hold lots of ammo, hit hard, and have the space for all the attachments you desire. In this video, I'll be going over all the rifles in Ready or Not, and rank them from F tier to S tier. Since the last time I did my rifle video, there have been some updates to the game. We'll be going over their real life usage, their use in policing, and how they perform in Ready or Not. This is meant to be a sequel to the original video, so if you haven't watched the first one and want to learn more about the history of the rifles in Ready or Not, go watch that. Some of you were upset that I didn't go over how the weapons in Ready or Not actually perform in-game in the last video. To that I say, if you need a YouTuber to validate your weapon choice in a PvE game, this is not the video for you. They're guns, and they shoot bullets. Pick the one you like, and go play the game. So, why do police forces use rifles in real life? Well, after a series of notorious incidents in the late 20th century, police officers were finding themselves outgunned. With some criminals wearing body armor and wielding rifles, it became clear that the police would need to upgrade their arsenals. Today, almost every law enforcement agency around the world has officers who have access to rifles, whether it be general duty members or specialized officers. We have a lot of rifles to cover, so let's get started. Perhaps the rifle most used by law enforcement agencies around the world is the AR-15. Accordingly, the first rifle you'll pick up in Ready or Not is the Mk18 Mod 0. Since the American military first adopted the M16 rifle in the 1960s, there have been many efforts to create a shorter version of the rifle. The M16 has a 20-inch barrel, making it a very accurate weapon, but unwieldy in tight spaces. There were many attempts at creating a shorter M16, which spawned many interesting variants. The one that still sees the most use today is the M4 carbine. A rifle with a 14.5-inch barrel, adjustable stock, and a flat-top receiver for optics mounting, it was, and is, a very capable rifle. But for some specialized tasks, such as VIP protection and CQB, the 14.5-inch barrel was still too long. One benefit of the AR-15 platform is that the upper and lower receivers are generally interchangeable. This allows one AR-15 lower to accommodate several upper receivers with multiple barrel lengths. When the Naval Special Warfare Center was tasked by US SOCOM with designing a shorter M4 carbine, they set about designing an upper receiver with a shorter barrel. What they came up with was eventually known as the Mk18 Mod 0. It's an AR-15 with a 10.3-inch barrel, with modifications to enhance reliability, given that a shorter barrel increases back pressure and wear. While the Mk18 Mod 0 specifically has not seen much law enforcement use, short barrel AR-15s are perhaps the most used rifles by SWAT operators. The short length and light weight makes them ideal for close quarters, replacement parts are readily available, and the 5.56 round is more ballistically effective than a handgun round. In Ready or Not, the Mk18 Mod 0 is the first rifle you use, and the standard by which all rifles are judged by in this game. 30 rounds of 5.56 is usually enough for most suspects you encounter, and the Mk18 has a plethora of sights and attachments for you to choose from. One thing you may notice when aiming through an optic is that the front sight post blocks a portion of your optic window. Some may not like this, but I actually find it useful. Ready or Not replicates a real-life phenomenon called height over bore. Simply put, Rifles with optics are zeroed to a specific distance, meaning at that distance, the optic reticle is exactly where the bullet will go. So when firing at a target closer than this distance, bullets will impact below the reticle. In Ready or Not, this is exactly what happens as well. Since the front sight post is slightly lower than the reticle, bullet impacts will appear closer to the front sight post than the reticle. So it's possible to use the front sight post to aim closer shots. While not precise, at close distances, it's good enough. The Mk18 Mod 0 is your first option, and a solid one at that. It's entirely possible to beat the game using just this rifle. For these reasons, the Mk18 goes into A tier. The Mk18 isn't the only AR-15 in the game, however. The SR-16 is another rifle choice in Ready or Not. Made by the company Knights Armament, the SR-16 is in essence a very high-end AR-15, featuring a very well-made barrel, a bolt carrier group enhanced for reliability, and other small touches that give it an edge over other AR-15s. The SR-16 is considered by many to be one of the best examples of Eugene Stoner's design. Being one of the best AR-15s on the market, it's seen used by some notable professional users, like the Secret Service. The SR-16 in Ready or Not features the URX 3.1 handguard, which in my opinion, is the nicest looking AR-15 handguard ever made. As for the weapon itself, it's quite good. 4 to 5 rounds with the SR-16 is all it'll take to put down most suspects, and the rifle doesn't have much recoil. No front sight post means that the view through the optic is less obstructed compared to the Mk18, if that's what you prefer. It's another AR-15, which means it's pretty good. So, the SR-16 goes into A tier. Next, we have the ARWC, or more accurately, the Wilson Combat SBR Tactical. This is another modernized AR-15, this time by the company Wilson Combat, a company that made their name by building high-end 1911s. The SBR is their take on a bespoke AR-15, a slim M-LOK handguard, custom grip, and short overall length. The weapon is ready for CQB. In-game, the ARWC is a good weapon as well. It's very much an AR-15. However, for some reason, the ARWC has a bit more recoil compared to the other AR-15s in this game. It's not a huge amount, but it is enough to be noticeable. Plus, the ARWC doesn't look as good as the SR-16 or the Mk18. So, the ARWC goes into B tier. The 3 AR-15s we've talked about so far fire the 5.56x45 round. It was adopted by NATO in 1980, but while AR-15s are one of the most prevalent rifles that fire the round, it isn't the only weapon that uses it. As a result of this adoption, NATO countries around the world use the implementation of the new bullet to adopt new weapon systems. In Germany, they used this opportunity to replace the long-serving but aging Gewehr 3. And don't worry, we will get to the G3. The G3 is representative of an older generation's idea of a service rifle, full length, made of steel, and firing a large round. These traits aren't necessarily negatives, but in the early 90s, lightweight rifles were all the rage, and the Bundeswehr wanted in on the trend. As with many modern German firearms, the company Heckler and Koch was tasked with making a new rifle that would use the 5.56 round. What they came up with was the G36 rifle. A weapon primarily made out of polymer, its initial iteration was light, had a built-in optic, and a foldable stock for easier transportation. For the time, it was a weapon of the future. Following its adoption by the Bundeswehr in 1997 and other countries later on, several variants of the G36 were created. One of these was the G36C. Beginning production in 2001, the G36C has a short 9-inch barrel and rail attachments for accessories. It's a weapon primarily intended for CQB, so many law enforcement agencies have picked up this specific variant of the G36. This is the variant seen in Ready or Not. In-game, the G36 is a formidable weapon. For some reason, even though the G36 should have a little more recoil than the other 5.56 guns, the G36 actually recoils a little less than them in-game. The rifle is also able to mount the Trigon SRO. In Ready or Not, this is my favorite optic in the game. The window of the SRO is very thin, giving you a very clear sight picture. Many people consider this gun to be the best in the game, and it's certainly one of my favorites. Low recoil, the best red dot in the game, and a gun that looks cool. What's there not to like? For these reasons, the G36 goes into S tier. The G36 is a fairly popular weapon worldwide, but in the United States, its ubiquity pales in comparison to the AR-15. By the 1990s, the AR-15 platform was well established in the American military, for the most part. At the time, the Army's Delta Force primarily used the H&K MP5 for CQB. While the MP5 is a very capable submachine gun, the problem was that it was a submachine gun. There was a growing belief that the 9mm round the MP5 fired was not ballistically capable enough for Delta's operations. On the other hand, the M4 carbines they had were certainly powerful enough for the job. But the M4 was too long for Delta, who primarily do CQB. Delta Force's R&D NCO Larry Vickers began looking for a solution. After many years and much trial and error, the rifle that resulted was the H&K 416, a weapon that utilizes a modified version of the G36's short-stroke piston system in an AR-15-esque body. It combines a reliable system with the familiar ergonomics of the M4. While a short-stroke piston system is not necessarily more reliable than an AR-15's direct impingement system, the one manufactured by H&K certainly is. And of course, the 10.5-inch version is short enough for CQB. Delta Force adopted the weapon in 2005, with many countries and units following suit after, including, of course, the Los Angeles Police Department. The real-life law enforcement agency the Los Sueños Police Department is loosely based off of. In Ready or Not, the H&K 416 is a good weapon. It performs very similarly to the AR-15s. The weapon manipulation is identical. But just like its real counterpart, the 416 does have a little more recoil compared to the AR-15s. Is it a big deal? No. But it is something to note. For being a consistent and overall good performer, as well as being a weapon with an incredibly storied history, the H&K 416 goes into A tier. Shameless plug. If you want to learn more about the 416, check out my video on it here. Germany's choice for a 5.56 rifle was fairly innovative in some ways. The polymer body and built-in optic were certainly forward-thinking for the time. But in other ways, the rifle is somewhat standard. It has a fairly conventional layout. This was not the approach Austria took when developing a new 5.56 rifle. The engineers at the Austrian company Steyr Arms conceptualized a bullpup rifle. A bullpup rifle has its grip in front of the action. This does two things. It makes for a shorter weapon, since the barrel of the rifle can extend throughout the body of the weapon, rather than extending forward like on a conventional rifle. But it also preserves the original length of the barrel. Take a look at these two rifles. The AUG on the bottom is obviously shorter, but the two rifles have the exact same barrel length of 20 inches. On paper, this is the best of both worlds. A shorter overall length, but with a longer barrel. Theoretically, this is a weapon both capable of CQB and longer distances. But bullpups, including the AUG, aren't perfect. The controls can be awkward to manipulate, the triggers can be very heavy, and rail space for attachments can be limited. So in 2012, Australian firearms company Lithgow Arms unveiled the F90. What it is essentially is a modernized AUG. There are a number of changes. Just to name a couple, the mag release is enlarged and in an easy-to-reach position, making reloads much easier than on an AUG. And the weapon is covered with rails, allowing you to attach whatever you need. And in 2018, the F90 Modular Bullpup rifle was revealed. The biggest change this variant introduced is that it takes standard AR-15 mags, much easier to source than AUG mags. This is the version seen in Ready or Not. In-game, the F90 is an excellent rifle. Recoil is very low, attachment selection is great, and the shorter length makes the F90 easier to maneuver in tight spaces. The F90 reloads are also very fast, comparable to the AR-15s. In every way, the F90 in Ready or Not is a top performer. Some of you were upset that I previously put the F90 in F tier for Lithgow Arms' dubious business practices. To quickly recap, there were plans to bring a civilian F90 to market called the ARWC, but these plans were canned due to quote-unquote ethical reasons. It is a fair point that the F90 shouldn't belong in F tier just because of real-life shortcomings, particularly when the F90 is one of the best guns in the game. Nowadays, the AR-15 has cemented its reputation in the American military, but this wasn't always the case. There was a time period in which the American military wanted to replace their AR-15 platforms. In 2003, US SOCOM decided they wanted a new modular weapon platform. It needed to be adaptable. Specifically, it needed to be able to quickly change parts to fulfill multiple roles. FN Herstal's SCAR rifle was the platform ultimately chosen. In testing, it was reliable, accurate, and had a reciprocating charging handle that was requested by SOCOM themselves, allegedly improving reliability. It's been issued to many different militaries and some law enforcement agencies around the world, and while it's overall a good weapon, there have been issues. While the SCAR itself is mostly reliable, it's been reported by many users that the weapon does not work well with Magpul PMags. This is a significant problem since PMags are incredibly popular. The other problem is that reciprocating charging handle. The charging handle can get caught on obstacles, which can slow down a user, or worse, cause malfunctions. The SCAR comes in two flavors, the 5.56 SCAR Light and the 7.62x51 SCAR Heavy. Both weapons are in Ready or Not, but for now, we'll talk about the SCAR Light, designated the Mark 16 by US SOCOM and Ready or Not. The Mark 16 in Ready or Not is a good weapon. Just like the other 5.56 guns, it has 30-round mags, a good assortment of attachments, and my favorite empty reload in the game. Originally, the SCAR comes with a stock that some call the UGG boot. It's a perfectly functional stock, but is replaceable with aftermarket stocks. The one on the Mark 16 in-game has been replaced with a stock tube adapter, meant to mimic an AR-15 buffer tube, but without any recoil components inside. This adapter exists for a user to use their favorite AR-15 stock on the SCAR. It makes sense why someone would use it, but man, it's ugly. The Mark 16 does have a little more recoil than the other 5.56 guns, but nothing too crazy. It's a solid choice overall, and will serve you well in Ready or Not. B tier. The final 5.56 gun is the SIG MCX. First unveiled in 2015, the MCX is yet another rifle platform that can easily switch out parts on the fly to accommodate different purposes. Over the years since its inception, the MCX has been picked up by a large number of military and law enforcement units around the world, as well as being a favorite in the civilian world. The modularity of the MCX has certainly contributed to its popularity. Being able to convert one rifle into multiple configurations is useful for anyone. The recoil system is all housed within the upper receiver, meaning that unlike an AR-15, the MCX can accommodate a folding stock. SIG USA themselves have a somewhat mixed reputation. Some of their products have a reputation for quality, while others, not so much. The MCX is a bit of both. Early generations had problems with bolt carrier groups, but current generation MCXs are typically good to go. It's perhaps for this reason that the MCX has never been issued as a standard infantry rifle. Not yet anyways. In Ready or Not, the MCX is a great weapon. It has very low recoil, good attachments, and looks good as well, except for the key mod handguard. If you need a go-to rifle in Ready or Not, the MCX is certainly a solid choice. A tier. 5.56 is a great round, but it isn't good at everything. The bullet is incredibly loud for its size, even when suppressed. This is in part due to the high speeds that 5.56 needs to travel at to achieve its deadly tumble effect. Enter 300 AAC Blackout, a round that travels at lower velocities while maintaining consistent lethality. Weapons firing the 300 Blackout round do not need long barrels, since maintaining a higher velocity isn't necessary. This allows 300 Blackout rifles to be incredibly short, perfect for those who need to use them in tight spaces. Using 300 Blackout subsonic rounds in conjunction with a suppressor also makes for a very quiet firearm. And since the gun is short anyways, mounting a suppressor means you still have an overall small weapon. From a logistical standpoint, one of the biggest advantages of 300 Blackout is that it can be loaded into AR-15 mags, and AR-15s can be easily converted to fire the round. This makes adoption of the round much easier for organizations that already have AR-15s in their inventory. In fact, there are some police tactical units who have converted all their AR-15s to exclusively use 300 Blackout. Speaking of AR-15s chambered in 300 Blackout, we have the Defense M4 PDW. Compared to the other weapons in the game, this one is fairly new, only having been released in the real world since 2020. Because of how relatively new the M4 PDW is, there's not much information on which organizations have picked up the weapon. In Ready or Not, the M4 PDW is a good representation of its real-life counterpart. Its small overall size makes the weapon easy to maneuver through doorways. Even with a suppressor, it does recoil more than the 5.56 guns, but it also does more damage. Reloads are fast, and having 30 rounds of 300 Blackout will put down even the toughest of suspects. So, the Defense M4 PDW goes into A tier. There are actually two SIG MCXs in Ready or Not. This one is based on the low visibility assault weapon. The defining trait of this MCX is the extended handguard that covers much of the suppressor. One of the downsides of a short weapon is that they usually have a shorter handguard. This makes the firearm more uncomfortable to hold and has less room for accessories. With a suppressor on, these disadvantages are still present. After all, you can't mount attachments to a suppressor, and you certainly shouldn't be holding it. If the firearm can accommodate it, one workaround is to have a handguard that fits over the suppressor. This solves both problems. It has more space for accessories and allows a user to hold the weapon further out on the gun, making it more comfortable. These handguards typically need to be made with the intention of fitting over a suppressor, as standard handguards are usually too narrow to do so. And the ALTRD Black Widow MCX handguard certainly can. This setup works very well as a compact suppressed weapon that can accommodate all the modern gizmos an operator would want. It works so well, in fact, that multiple special operations units have adopted the LVAW as their go-to sneaky rifle. In effect, it's a modern replacement for the MP5 SD. In Ready or Not, the LVAW is one of the best looking guns in the game. There are very few firearms that have a recessed suppressor, which certainly contributes to how unique the LVAW looks. It has the same attachments as most of the other rifles, although you'll have no choice as to whether you want to use a suppressor or not. This is barely a downside though. This is one of the best sounding guns in the game.
The weapon! Your hands!
The recoil of the LVAW is also incredibly low. It may be a little bit higher than the 5.56 guns, but honestly, I have a hard time telling the difference. High damage, low recoil, and exceptionally good looking, the SIG MCX LVAW is an S-tier weapon. For the last 300 blackout weapon, we have the Brownells BRN-180. This is a project led by American firearms store Brownells in conjunction with PWS and FM products. It's essentially a modern take on the AR-180. Utilizing the short stroke system of the AR-180, the rifle houses its recoil spring within the receiver. This means that the BRN-180 can use any stock the user wants, just like the MCX. But unlike the MCX, the BRN-180 can use any standard, easy-to-find AR-15 lower. The BRN-180 is available in a multitude of calibers, including, of course, 300 blackout. A 10-inch barrel and a 1913 folding stock, this weapon is perfect for close quarters. And as an added bonus, this is a weapon tailor-made for the civilian market. It hasn't been picked up by any professional organizations currently, but many civilians have been satisfied with their BRN-180s. In Ready or Not, the BRN-180 is an excellent weapon. 300 blackout damage with very little recoil is great to have. You can choose to suppress the gun and have a very quiet weapon, or forego the can and have an extremely short rifle. It's a very fun gun to use, and also one of the best weapons in the game. S tier. The next weapon is the only usable representation of a Soviet firearm in Ready or Not. Sort of. The Arsenal SLR-107UR is the only AK in the game. Arsenal is a company based in Bulgaria that makes a number of firearms, including AKs. The SLR-107UR is an AK chambered in 7.62x39 and has a short 8.5-inch barrel. 7.62x39 is similar to 300 blackout in that it does not need to travel at high velocities to reach its full damage potential. So, AKs chambered in the round can be a shorter length without compromising much performance. The AK uses what's known as a long-stroke gas piston system. This is a very reliable operating method, but has one downside. It creates more recoil compared to other semi-auto rifle operating systems. Couple that with a short barrel and the 7.62x39 round, and the SLR has quite a bit of recoil, even when compared to other AKs. There isn't much information on which organizations have picked up the SLR, if any, but there certainly are military and police units in Russia that utilize short-barreled AKs chambered in 7.62x39. A very small number of American police departments in rural Alaska have also used AKs as patrol rifles. In Ready or Not, the SLR is quite true to its real-life counterpart. It's certainly short, making it easy to bring into tight spaces, but the recoil of the SLR is quite stout, more so than most of the other guns in the game. Even though 7.62x39 damage in-game is exactly the same as 300 blackout, the recoil is substantially higher, meaning you're more likely to miss shots. The SLR is one of the few rifles that can equip the best red dot in the game, the Trirchakon SRO, but its high recoil means that the SLR is somewhat more difficult to use. Add on a slower reload, and you have a weapon that isn't really worth using if you're chasing performance. And of course, while the SLR isn't ugly, it's no AK-104 or Krinkov. So, the SLR goes into C tier. Finally, we reached a category I know lots of you were waiting for: the battle rifles. These rifles are loud, accurate, and large. For the most part. Harkening from a time where bigger bullets were the preference, battle rifles are classified as rifles that fire full power rounds, in contrast to automatic rifles that fire intermediate cartridges, such as the M4 or AKM. And rifles chambered in 7.62x51 are certainly battle rifles. Law enforcement agencies typically do not use 7.62x51 rifles. As they operate around civilians, overpenetration is a concern with these larger rounds. However, there are a couple use cases where 7.62x51 does make sense in law enforcement. The first would be used by police snipers. These specialized officers are typically meant to observe, and don't usually need to fire their weapons. But when they do, it's crucial for them to hit their target. While the distances they shoot at aren't nearly as far as military snipers, there is a much higher likelihood of obstacles between them and their target, like glass or drywall. Having a larger round means the bullet can punch through these barriers without as much impact on its trajectory. The other use case would be for animal control. In smaller jurisdictions, a police officer may be the first on scene to handle a wild animal. Should the officer need to put down a large predator, 7.62x51 will do a better job than smaller rounds. The M14 was the American military's first service rifle chambered in 7.62x51. It features a wooden stock, 20-round mags, and a full auto mode. Adopted in 1957 as a replacement for a number of different weapons, the M14 was meant to be the latest and greatest of rifle technology. That hope was short-lived. In the jungles of Vietnam, the M14 suffered many problems. The weight of the rifle made it difficult to maneuver, the wooden stock swelled and affected accuracy, and the full automatic mode was not particularly controllable. As a result, the M14 was phased out fairly quickly, though it still was used in small numbers as a DMR. Because of this, many law enforcement agencies purchased these surplus M14s. Some are still used to this day, though most are regulated to storage. In Ready or Not, the M14 is certainly one of the weapons in the game. It's a long rifle that hits hard on both ends. Most suspects will go down between 1 to 2 rounds, but the recoil is very high. The M14 is also unable to attach any foregrips, which exacerbates the recoil of the rifle. Technically speaking, the M14 in Ready or Not isn't a M14 at all. Rather, it's an M1A SOCOM 16, a shorter version of the M14 with a 16-inch barrel. The SOCOM 16 is better in CQB than the M14, but also has more recoil than its longer counterpart. A compensator at the end helps tame its kick, but it's still a lot to handle. The rifle is also incredibly loud, which can be a good or bad thing, depending on what you prefer. Previously, you were able to select between the SOCOM 16 or the M14, but it seems this choice has been removed. With all that said, 7.62x51 rifles in Ready or Not are inherently good because of their high damage, and the M14 is no exception, so it goes into B tier. While the Americans were busy adopting the M14, the Germans took a different approach. A number of German engineers who initially worked for Mauser were relocated to Spain after World War II, where they would continue designing firearms. One of their designs caught the attention of the now West Germany, who were looking for a new rifle that would fire the 7.62x51 round. After some military trials and squabbling over production rights, the rifle that resulted was the HK G3. It was quickly adopted by German military and law enforcement, and a number of countries afterwards. To this day, the Bundeswehr has G3s in their inventory, though they are mostly reserve weapons. If there's one word to describe the G3, it's big. The gun is massive. With an overall 40-inch length, it's comparable to many modern DMRs. The round it fires is large, and the mags it uses are huge, holding 20 rounds. The recoil is also quite substantial. These are all traits that are reflected in Ready or Not. It's massive, loud, and packs a punch on both ends. It's among the highest damaging weapons in the game. Suspects rarely need more than 2 rounds to go down, but the trade-off is in recoil. The G3 kicks pretty hard. You'll need to pace your shots if you want to hit your target. The G3 in-game is a very long weapon. This makes getting through doorways a little more cumbersome compared to some of the other rifles in-game. But, for all its downsides, the G3 is a great weapon. The fact that you won't need more than a couple shots makes taking down even the most heavily armored suspects fairly easy. Unlike real life, the G3 can accommodate all the attachments you need with ease, and the reloads, while not the fastest, are very cool. The G3 is an excellent weapon. High damage, manageable recoil, and immaculate looks. The G3 goes into A tier. The G3 is a great weapon, but when it comes to CQB, it isn't ideal because of its length. 7.62x51 is another round that needs to travel at high velocity to be effective, which means it needs a long barrel. In the good old days when the Mk18 didn't exist, the British SAS were looking for a CQB weapon that used rounds bigger than 9mm. American firearms engineer Bill Fleming was contracted to create a smaller version of the G3 for the SAS. What resulted was the HK51, a mini G3 with an 8.3-inch barrel. This gun arguably hurts the shooter almost as much as its targets. The recoil is high, the muzzle flash is incredibly large and concussive, and the bullets it fires do not travel as fast compared to its longer counterparts. Perhaps for these reasons, the SAS did not use them very much, and the weapon hasn't been picked up by many other professional organizations. Where they gained popularity is in the American civilian market. And no wonder. A loud, obnoxious firearm is a perfect contender as a range toy. But while it may be somewhat impractical in real life, it's arguably the best weapon in Ready or Not. Just like the other battle rifles, the HK51 hits hard. But where the real HK51 recoils more than its longer counterpart, in Ready or Not, the HK51 has the exact same recoil pattern as the G3. The only difference is that the HK51 has a larger muzzle flash. What this means is that the HK51 is simply a better version of the G3 in Ready or Not. All stats are virtually identical, but the HK51 is a much shorter weapon. In fact, the HK51 is one of the shortest primary weapons in the entire game. In Ready or Not, where CQB situations are plenty, this is a huge benefit. It's loud, it's unpleasant to shoot, and it's one of the best weapons in Ready or Not. S tier. We've already talked about the Scar Light, so let's talk about the Scar Heavy. The Scar Heavy is the variant of the rifle that fires the 7.62x51 round. It has a lot of the benefits of the Scar Light, but also a lot of the downsides. One of the criticisms of the Scar Light is that it's a very chunky rifle. For a 5.56 gun, it's a very tall weapon, making it more uncomfortable to hold. On a rifle that's meant to be an assaulter's weapon, this can be an annoyance. But in modern day, a 7.62x51 rifle isn't typically used as an assaulter's weapon. So, the bulk of the Scar is less of an issue for the heavy variant. Perhaps for this reason and others, while the Scar Light is no longer being purchased by SOCOM, the Scar Heavy is still being used by that organization. It's also being used by militaries around the world, but there isn't much info on law enforcement agencies that have adopted the weapon, if any. In Ready or Not, the Scar Heavy is an odd weapon. It's a battle rifle, so it has all the benefits of the heavy round. In other words, it hits hard, and reloads are fast, since the rifle has controls very similar to an AR-15 layout. The main negative of this rifle is its recoil. While it isn't high, it is strange. It's hard to articulate what exactly is wrong with it. Other than that, it feels weird. Perhaps it has something to do with the recoil moving the entire screen up and down, rather than just the rifle. Still, it's a good weapon. It hits hard and looks good. Unlike the Scarlight, this one has the proper UGG boots stock. So, the Scar Heavy goes into B tier. Finally, we get to the SA-58 OSW, the original battle rifle in Ready or Not. This is a gun that has been putting down bad guys since early access. Functionally, it's a shortened version of the FN FAL. Britain's choice for a 7.62x51 service rifle, the FN FAL would be adopted by many NATO countries. Earning the nickname the right arm of the free world, it would be a staple of Western small arms. One notable country that chose not to use the FAL were the Americans, who chose the M14 instead.
Ew! What the fuck?
But that doesn't mean there wasn't a demand for FALs in America. DS Arms is an American company founded in 1987. They are dedicated to producing American-made FALs. But in addition to making FAL clones, they also have their own designs. One of these is the SA-58 Operations Specialist Weapon, or OSW. This is essentially a FAL para model with a 12-inch barrel, rails for attachments, and a folding stock. Despite the name, the SA-58 OSW is used primarily by civilians. No professional organization has adopted the weapon. But in Ready or Not, the SA-58 OSW is incredible. It's a battle rifle, so it obviously hits hard. But everything about it is incredibly aggressive. From the reload, to the charging handle, to the sound, this is not a weapon for the sneaky or subtle. This is the gun you use to announce your presence and the bad guy's impending doom. Yes, the recoil is high, and since the Dark Waters update, it's statistically probably not the best battle rifle anymore. But I don't care. The SA-58 OSW was my favorite gun last time, and it remains the king. So, that's all the rifles in Ready or Not. They're all perfectly viable. Proper strategy is far more important in this game than your choice of weapon. If you liked this video, make sure to check out all my previous Ready or Not videos here. And if you like video games and guns, check out my videos here. And if you're into real gear and other random incoherent topics, stay tuned.